Hey Bubble family, welcome back to the channel. So this is now the 8th time I have tried to do this intro. At this point, I'm going to have a whole video just of me going, this is the 2nd time I've done the intro, 3rd time, 4th time, 5th, you get the picture. Nothing's going right for me today, nothing. I'm really having one of those days where everything is going wrong. So yeah, hopefully 8th time lucky. So hi, welcome. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the very tragic case surrounding Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, or Laundrie. I really apologise if I get the name wrong. This was just such a sad case. Just one of those cases that really hit home, and I mean, I was affected by it, watching it, listening to it, 2 young lives that are just gone, in the blink of an eye. And, regardless of the whys and wherefores, it's still very sad. And so I wanted to talk about this a while back, but out of respect for the family, out of respect for the fact the case was ongoing, I decided not to talk about it until now. So if you are interested in something along these lines, there will be, obviously, as you know, a trigger warning that has gone up at the beginning of this video. And there will be numbers at the end regarding domestic abuse, and I will put American numbers, because obviously predominantly, Europe, UK, I think Australia as well. I'll put those numbers at the end. So if you know of anyone that is struggling, or you're struggling yourself, please just give those numbers a ring, or speak to a friend, family member, me even, email me, and I'll do my very best to help you. So in saying that, you know what to do. Grab your cuppa, whether it be tea, coffee, brandy, gin, whatever your drink of choice, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? And, well, let's dive right in. This case, I think, shook. Well, not I think, it did. It shook. It shook, and just internationally, it shook everybody. I think there's not many of us that haven't seen that footage where they were pulled over. We're talking about Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. I'm going to say Laundrie, and I apologise if this is wrong. They were pulled over on the side of the road, and she was obviously very distressed, and there was a lot of people that were kind of putting their 2 penneth worth in regards to that particular video.
Did you get hit in the face?
Newly released police body cam video shows more of the moments from an August incident in Utah between Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie.
We want to know the truth if he actually hit you.
I guess, yeah, but I hit him first.
Where did he hit you? Don't worry, just be honest.
He grabbed my face.
Slap your face or what?
Well, he grabbed me with his nail, and I guess that's why it was. I definitely have a cut right here because I could feel it.
Yeah.
When I touched it, it burns.
The video, taken more than 5 weeks before Petito was discovered dead near a campground in Bridger Teton National Forest. Moab City police pulled over the couple's van on August the 12th, separating Petito and Laundrie after they said a witness reported seeing a man hit a woman in the face.
She gets really worked up, and when she does, she swings, and she had her cell phone in her hand, so I was just trying to push her away.
Well, to be honest, I definitely hit him first.
Where'd you hit him?
I slapped him.
You slapped him first? And then just on his face?
And he gets kind of just shut up.
Police previously released shorter videos of the incident, but the newly expanded version also includes conversation between officers on the scene.
In no way, shape, or form that I can perceive does what happened here, a little slap fight between fiancés who love each other, want to be together, can I perceive that this is going to digress into the situation where he's going to be a battered man? Right. But then again, I don't have a crystal ball.
According to the police report, the responding officer initially described the altercation as a mental-emotional health break, not a domestic assault. Earlier this month, the city of Moab, Utah announced it's launching an independent investigation into the way officers handled that incident.
And it was interesting to me, the before and after. So before, obviously, we had the news that she obviously she was murdered. We had the people that were talking about the footage, and a lot of people were against Gabby. There was a lot of people that were kind of saying, oh, she seems hysterical, she seems high maintenance, he kind of come across a bit more laid back, so they were very much sort of against Gabby's behavior. And this is why psychology fascinates me, and the flip-flopping of how people change their mind depending on the narrative. So there was a lot of that. And then obviously when this come out, it all changed. Oh, no, there was still some that was consistent in what they were saying, but then the tables turned, and everyone was kind of looking at it again and kind of, I can see, he looks narcissistic, he looks psychopathic, and all of these things were coming out. And this is the thing, when you have everything that's online, that we see so much now, because obviously before, years ago, we'd only have stuff in the paper. We'd have maybe the odd news footage, but we didn't have police body cams back then. So we didn't get to see all the ins and outs of what was going on. We just had what the police told us happened. But here we have this footage that is there in black and white. It's there for us to see and to make our own assumptions on. But like with everything, you're still only getting a snapshot. You're not getting the before. I mean, okay, yes, we did have the police report where somebody phoned in and said that they saw Brian be quite aggressive to Gabby. So we do have that. We have obviously statements by various family members, but again, after the fact they'd gone missing. I don't believe these were released prior to this incident. So obviously, but these are still, again, snapshots. These are still opinions. These are still snapshots into what has gone on. Then obviously we have what happened. And again, we have the different versions of the events. We have the ones where people are 100% convinced the family helped Brian, and 100% are convinced that the family are in the wrong. And then we have the ones that they don't believe that the family helped Brian, or they sit on the kind of, it's family. He's family, And so this is where a debate, I love having debates, I really do. And I love when I read the comments, how people can debate about having different opinions. And we are entitled to have those different opinions. I don't believe that anyone is wrong in having that opinion. Now, obviously, we have facts and we have the truth, which is right, but you're still entitled to have your opinion surrounding what has gone on. So when we look at the two people, take away the outside stuff for a minute, and we look at these two people, these young, Gabby seemed very outgoing. She was very vivacious, full of life. You can kind of get that sense about her. And then you've got Brian, who seemed a bit more kind of introverted, quiet, perhaps, in a sense, the polar opposite of each other. And, in some ways, opposites attract. They do. You have one that can balance out the other in a relationship. It doesn't necessarily mean that when two people are so opposite of each other that it just doesn't work. It can work, but as long as you find the healthy balance, where you still work as a team, but one can be more outgoing, but they're very accepting of the other, who is a bit more introverted, and then the introverted one kind of brings the calm to the storm of the extrovert, so to speak, and they just ground each other in some way. And that is when, a relationship can work. However, I believe in this instance, I think this is where the differences possibly become, where they worked in the beginning, but unfortunately, because they were young and perhaps because they hadn't worked on themselves, they didn't have that emotional maturity, they were not able to sustain that. And I think this is where a lot of problems happen in relationships, is that you you get caught up in the lust, you get caught up in the excitement of the beginning, the you know, that honeymoon phase, as we call it, without actually looking at the compatibility. You know, are you compatible as a couple? You know, building that friendship, you know, building that foundation. You know, it's important to have a solid foundation, and that's why whenever I work with people in regards to relationships, I try and get them to build that foundation first. You know, it's important to get to know every aspect of somebody, because we are multifaceted. We have different personalities that come up. I do, you know, a lot of us do. And, you know, I think it's very important to know yourself enough that when you go into a relationship, you're kind of going to know that when that partner comes along, you're going to know if that's going to work. You know, like I'm half Irish, I'm very fiery. I have a very softer side, you know, the side that's the therapist, the side that's understanding, but I have that. But I have a fiery side, and I know that if I probably got with somebody that was equally fiery, it wouldn't work. So in the beginning with Gabby and Brian, I'd imagine that her kind of vivacious, out there kind of look on like was probably very attractive to Brian. And in the same flip side, Brian's very sort of calm, grounded way was possibly very attractive to Gabby. And so of course here you have this young relationship that was not without its problems. You know, she's, like I say, very out there. And I think what come with that, and what I saw on that video when they were pulled over, was somebody that is very emotional. She's a very emotional young lady. She probably wears her heart on her sleeve, and she feels everything. So she's probably very empathic, feels everything, gets hurt very easily. So she's quite sensitive as a person. And then what was probably starting to come out was Brian's lack of empathy. Now, a lot of people have speculated that they think he's a psychopath or a sociopath. And when you're dealing with people that lack empathy, there could be, and there are varying reasons why somebody can lack empathy. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a psychopath or a sociopath or even narcissistic for that matter. Now, obviously, I don't know Brian as a person personally. I don't know Gabby, so I'm only going by what I know, what I've seen. Do I think that Brian is well, Brian did obviously kill Gabby. We know that now because the notebook was found. He admitted responsibility. Do I think that he is do I think he's a psychopath or a sociopath? I'm probably going to get really slammed for this, but actually, no, I don't. And here's the reason, because a few things were coming out in regards to the possibility that Brian may have autism. Now, I don't know if this is 100% true. I don't know if I've seen anything that's been confirmed, but this has been going around. Now, it also could be that they thought he possibly did because he displayed a lot of autistic tendencies, but he never got fully diagnosed. Now, I'm not saying that this is an excuse or a reason, and please believe you me, I am not. And my heart goes out to Gabby's family because I couldn't think of anything worse than losing a child. You know, she is innocent in this, you know, didn't deserve to have her life taken so quickly. And as you can see, I'm being very tentative in how I say this because as much as I believe what I believe, I am very aware that there are some very strong opinions surrounding this case. And, you know, that's great because this is what a debate is, you know, and I love the fact that when I read the comments, we do have those debates here. But it's kind of still very raw. So I'm being very tentative around this. So going back to kind of what I was saying, when you have somebody like Gabby, who is very emotional, I would say that when they argue, she seems like somebody that would possibly, her pitch would go up. it's like she would almost kind of not highly strung, but she would kind of become elevated, and her voice would get raised. She'd possibly shout, maybe even scream, maybe, you know, she would have to release this the stress that she was feeling, this upset she was feeling. And when you've got somebody like Brian, who I have a feeling possibly had issues with sensory perception. So he's probably very sensitive in loud pitched noises, which is possibly why he's so kind of introverted, quite laid back. He's not particularly a people person. He doesn't do well in being around people. So then going on this road trip probably was like the perfect thing, because it was the two of them. It matched, because you've got, you know, Gabby, who's very outgoing, wants to see the world, but then in a way it matched Brian because it's just the two of them and it's in an enclosed space. It's like, you know, they're going to places there's not lots of people. So in the beginning, it probably seemed like the most amazing adventure even. But the problem you have here is that they were not compatible. So what happens then when you put someone inside almost like a shoebox, eventually those things that create you to be non-compatible are going to surface. And I imagine this is what started to happen. So you have the fact that I believe Gabby was very meticulous in how she wanted the van to be. And then you possibly had that Brian was so laid back, he didn't really think about those things. So then she would get upset with him, and then he'd be very kind of like nonchalant about it, and probably very, you know, oh, don't worry about it. It's, you know, it's fine. I'm, you know, like super laid back. And then that started to aggravate Gabby. And so they started to clash. So what I think possibly started to happen is that Brian couldn't deal with Gabby's emotional outbursts. And this would go along the lines if Brian had autism, or if Brian struggled to be empathic, or struggled with her, you know, being emotional about things. Now, again, I'm not saying that Gabby has no right to be emotional, but you're dealing with two young people here, and you're dealing with people that have not grown, not developed fully. You know, they're still learning about life. They're still learning about themselves. You know, they've kind of come in on this honeymoon type of relationship where it's all been great and wonderful. You know, there's certainly been statements where they said that in the beginning, you know, they seem like a lovely couple. You know, so what creates that lovely couple to go wrong? Well, the simple fact is they're non-compatible. And I think you have this particular instance where you've got those things that are kind of building and building and building. And what I think then started to happen was then when we saw that video of the road trip, this was building to be the volcanic eruption. And in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, I certainly am not saying that all police are wrong, but I think they missed a beat here. I think they missed an opportunity to see what was really going on under the surface here. And I know they separated them for the day. Like I think Gabby went to a hotel and he went to a hotel. But they missed something crucial in that scenario, where you've got Brian building like a volcano, where he's getting tired and he's getting angry and he's not dealing with Gabby very well. And you've got the fact that Gabby is just escalating because she can't deal with Brian in the way he speaks to her, is telling her basically, you know, like shutting her out of the car. You know, I would imagine, and again, only opinion, that he was getting frustrated with her and trying to shock her into changing behavior. And this does happen in relationships where you kind of do things like, you know, you've got Gabby who's wrenching the wheel of the van when the police are behind, You've got this escalation of events which they're both responsible for in this moment. I'm certainly not saying that Gabby deserved, to have her face grabbed or anything like that. Absolutely not. I mean, but this is where the escalation is happening. I don't believe he was like this in the beginning. I think this is now an escalation of events, of the fact that you've got two very, very incompatible people. You've got someone who is very laid back, doesn't deal with emotions very well, doesn't know how to empathize with Gabby. And then you've got Gabby who gets frustrated with Brian, who just doesn't seem to care. And that's how it would translate to her, his being so laid back and not really caring about the fact that she likes the band to be a specific way, or she likes certain things a specific way, like she likes what she eats, and or he does, and it would possibly come across to her that he doesn't care about her because he's not listening. And this is also translate to something called the love language. It's how two people receive love, how two people receive that language. Like for some reason, in some scenarios, you will get somebody that will say, well, you must know I love you because I go to work all day and I pay the bills and I look after you. But yet the woman would be, well, yeah, but you never tell me you love me. So for her, she will receive love in the words I love you, but not seeing the fact that he will be showing her that he loves her by going out to work every day, perhaps in a job that he doesn't like, but he does that because he knows that taking care of his family is what is more important. Or you will get the fact that you will get a guy that's not particularly bothered about what job he does, but he'll buy gifts and but he'll never say I love you, but he'll buy gifts and he'll be like, well, of course I love you, I bought you that. But so you see what I'm saying? It's like it's how we receive love, which can translate from our childhood and how we grew up. And I absolutely believe in Gabby and Brian's case is that these two incompatible people, which went from having this it was all fun and exciting in the beginning, but then suddenly as they spend more time together, like I say, in a shoebox, all these problems were starting to come out, and they were just getting so frustrated with each other, but not dealing with it in a mature, healthy way. So then you have this kind of what I would call mini kind of explosion in this incident with the video, with the police video, where I do believe the police missed a beat here, because Brian's actions, if you look at the video, you've got Gabby who is almost hyperventilating, almost, kind of almost on the verge of having a panic attack. You can see it, she's just in the whole body language. She's it's kind of like that. And she's really upset. And then you've got Brian, which is where I think people then started to analyze his behavior, in that he didn't seem to act like he cared about Gabby. And I think, again, this goes down to this lack of empathy that he has in dealing with emotional outbursts, and I think that he was just trying to seem calm, and you could see there was some anxiety with him. You could, if you know about body language, you can see that, and he was kind of making a few jokes, and and a lot of people took this as him just really not caring about Gabby, and not, and almost like showing this psychopathic side. Whereas I actually look at that and think, he was nervous, he was anxious, he's been pulled over by the police, which he's probably never been done before. You've got the fact that Gabby is really upset. They've both had this altercation. They've both kind of gone for each other. And I think this is what the police saw. They probably just saw this young couple that had a fight. They got a bit physical, and it would blow over, which, at the time, I guess that's what they felt, and they thought that was right. Obviously, now looking at it, I'm sure that they kick themselves now. But I guess if you're more trained in that, then you would possibly have seen that there was something more going on here, and perhaps that had been the time that maybe they should have both gone home. But they didn't. They carried on, and of course, then, like with a lot of situations, if it's not dealt with, because there's no way to deal with it, so they would have just calmed down. They probably would have told each other they loved each other again, and they would have just looked at it as like, oh, we've had this fight, it's all blown over, and we're just going to carry on. And they probably would have had a couple of days where it would have been great, and then the problems that are already there would have then escalated again. And then what I think and I believe happened is that they got into another argument. They got into this big fight. Again, it got physical. And I'd imagine that possibly Gabby then started yelling, and the high-pitched noise, and and again, this is just my opinion, and I could be absolutely wrong, and I'm okay if I'm wrong, but this is just how I believe. I think he possibly grabbed her to keep her quiet, to stop her from yelling, to calm her down, which was when you've got somebody in that kind of that's getting that worked up and getting upset and angry, and it's just kind of coming out in such an emotional outburst. That would be the worst thing to do. So of course then he's grabbed her, and then I would imagine then they've got into this fight. She's, it's really escalated, and I think then he then did what he did. I don't believe that he set out to do this. I don't believe it was calculated. I believe he just, it's like a lot of people say it's like when the red mist goes down. When you lose your temper so much, the red mist goes down, and it's like you do or say something, and you kind of just do it, and afterwards you're almost like, oh my God, what have I done? And I think that's what I believe happened. He killed her in that kind of wanting her to stop, and then kind of went into this shutdown, went into this kind of almost like denial of what had happened. And that then to me would explain why then his actions were the way they are. Like, he used her card, he drove in her van, he left her there, and I know that don't get me wrong, it's awful. It is really awful. But as a therapist, I do have to look at both sides. That's my job, to look at both sides of things. When I'm talking on camera, that is. Obviously, when I've got a client coming to me, then obviously I go with what my client says and does. But as I'm talking on camera here to you, it's I want to give this objective both sides, in a way to hopefully open up this debate, to kind of get what you guys think. Do I think he's a cold-blooded killer? No, I don't. I think that he just didn't know himself, and he did something that he will. He would have had to have lived with for the rest of his life, which is why then I think he took his own life. Do I think the family helped him? Yes, I do. And I suppose in a way, I want to put it to you guys, and open up that debate. As parents, if any of you are parents or a family member, would you, if what I'm saying is true, say for example, if Brian has got autism, or he has got some kind of deficiency in learning, or something that created this lack of empathy, that created those things, and he up until this point he was just like a nice normal young man, and then he goes home and he basically tells you that that he's done this, and that your child is going to be in prison for life, or even the death penalty. I don't know the rules and regulations of what it is like over there still. Would you help them? Would you help them? Or would you say, you've got to hand yourself in? And it's something that I've wrestled with. It's something that I have wrestled with in myself. I think, in my opinion, if it was one of my children, and obviously, as you know, I have a son that's got autism, and I obviously have a son that hasn't. I think in both circumstances, if they'd have come back to me, and told me something, I would say, hand yourself in. And I think this is where it went terribly wrong, because you know, in the eyes of the family, because I think that if they'd have got him to turn himself in, okay, yes, he might have gone to prison, and there might have been every chance that they wouldn't have even wanted to recognise the fact that there was autism at play here or something else, and he might have got the death penalty, but I think that's a chance that you have to be willing to take, because you have to, as a parent, you have to instill responsibility and consequences for actions. So I think that they should have said to him, you know, hand yourself in, tell the truth, you know, and hopefully, you know, we will get you a lawyer that will, you know, be able to get you a lesser sentence or something along those lines. But I guess their fear of Brian going to prison or something even worse kind of outweighed doing the right thing, and they then helped him, I believe, go on the run. And that I don't feel is right at all. You know, can I understand it? Yes, to a point, because it's their child. But is it the right thing? No, it's not the right thing. But then I'm not in that situation. So I think when we can look on the outside looking in, it's easy to say that, but I wasn't there. This, touch wood, this has never happened. So, you know, obviously now we've found out that he did do it, and in the notebook, and the fact that he took his own life as well. Most sociopaths or psychopaths don't tend to do that. There is a sign of, usually when they, and I'm not saying all cases, usually when they take their own life, there is, they either do it because there's no way out. Like, for example, you sometimes have serial killers that will end up taking their own life because they realise that they're just not going to get away with it anymore, and so they will take their own life. Whereas this is a one-time incident, and I think that the guilt was so much for him that I think he chose to take his own life. And that's what I believe. And again, I could be wrong. You know, please don't slam me in the comments. You know, because, you know, like I say, this is a debate. We are entitled to have an opinion on things. Just because I do this as a profession doesn't mean to say that I'm completely right in this. And I know that probably other professionals will say that he's a psychopath or say that he's a sociopath. I mean, what he's done is horrendous, but I don't believe that he's. I think it was just too much. I think it was an argument that escalated. Like, you know, do you know what? Actually, this road trip has shown that we're not compatible. Let's just call it quits and go home. But their immaturity and not recognizing the signs, they carried on, and obviously what happened. So I hope that you guys understand where I'm coming from, and and maybe this has given you a pause for thought, even that maybe looking at it from a more subjective point of view, because this is why we do what we do. It's having these conversations is important in understanding different angles. I mean, you can still come to the same conclusion, but it's always good to get different perspectives, because sometimes you learn something. Even I do. I will listen to somebody else and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that. And, so it's important to have that. I'm sorry, there's a lot of noise going on because my son is home and he's now playing with Arthur, and it's just got very noisy upstairs. So I apologise if the camera's picking that up. So thank you for listening. Thank you for, again, subscribing to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. It's free. It's not going to cost you anything to subscribe. You're not signing your life away, but it does help the algorithm. It does help YouTube think that this is a channel worth saving and keeping. Again, thank you to everyone who has given me a cup of tea. I am very, very grateful to you. That's it from me. So anyway, have a great weekend, Bubble family. And I just also want to give a shout out to a lovely friend of mine, a subscriber to the channel, who sent me some lovely gifts. Something included in that was Sassy by Savannah Makeup. She is on Instagram, so give her a follow. I tried the lip gloss and I absolutely love it. It was clear lip gloss with a little bit of sparkly in it. I haven't tried the eyeshadow palette. I will, and then what I will do is I will then give an honest little review about it, because it's important that I'm not doing this for them. This is my own independent kind of review. So yeah, So other than that, I love you all. Have a great time, and I will see you next week in the next video. Bye, Bubble family.